Hey guys, my name's Kian Hushman, and today we're going to be checking out ML Soundlab's MIKKO guitar cabinet emulation plugin and how you guys can get pretty much any different type of guitar cabinet sound you want. Stick around to the end of the video so you can see exactly how I made the IR that you're going to hear in the next song right about now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my plugin chain before we start. So I've got G-Tune loaded up. This is a great little free tuner plugin. I use it in all my other videos. If you've watched this channel before, you'd recognize it. I cannot recommend this enough. This is a great little plugin. The amp that we're going to be using is the Fortin Nameless, obviously with the cab section disabled since we're running it through the MIKKO. But just to go through the settings I've got running on it. So the Zool is turned on and the hex drive. Zool's sitting at around somewhere just past 12 o'clock. Drive all the way off on the hex drive. Level sitting at somewhere between 7 and 8, and then the tone all the way up. You might think that's a little bit high with the tone. Reason being is that I'm used to using the grind pedal, my 7-string and stuff like that, and the grind has a little bit more of a mid push to it. So just to make it used to my ears, I'm pushing the hex drive tone all the way up. Gate set pretty high, oversampling on high obviously to get the best sound quality out of the plugin. Moving on to the amp head, a little bit of changes from the default configuration when you load it up. So the must volume control is turned down just to around somewhere like 4. Presence is the exact same, I haven't changed that from the default. Bass I turned down a little bit, it's sitting somewhere at about 6. Mids I pushed up just a touch, just below 6, because I like a bit more mids in my tone. Treble I've turned down just to get rid of some of that harshness in the high end. Gain 2, it usually starts off all the way at 10, but I have turned it down just below 8, so you get rid of some of that flubbiness. And gain 1 I haven't touched at all. And this is what it sounds like. And right now we're using my Jackson Misha Mansour USA HD6, strung up with 11 to 56 D'Addario NYXL strings in drop B. And this is MIKKO. So MIKKO is a cabinet simulation plugin from ML Soundlab. I've been using ML Soundlab IRs for a very long time now, and MIKKO was kind enough to send me this to try out to show you guys. As you can see, there are a bunch of different things you can play around with. You've got a bunch of different speakers here coupled with heaps of different mics. You can add mics, take mics away, control the mix of the mics, the angle, the radius, pan them left and right, phase distance. There's so many things you guys can change, as well as the impedance and cut, which I don't know too much about and I'm scared to touch it, but I know that there's a great video by MIKKO himself where he explains all that stuff. I'll leave a link for that video in the description, but all we're going to be doing today is concentrating on the mic controls as well as the different types of speakers and mics that you guys can play around with. So as you can see on the speaker drop down box here, there are a bunch of different speakers you guys can play around with. For example, you got Zilla 2x12, an Orange, a Fender Combo, Mesa 4x12 old and new speaker. There are just a bunch of different speakers that you guys can pick from. To go along with those speakers, there's also a bunch of different mics that you guys can choose with the speakers. And the best part is that you can add up to 9 different mics around one speaker and have them all as different mics, all with the different mixes, angles, radiuses, pan them differently. There's just so many different options you can do with the 9 mics. Personally, I think that's a little bit overkill, but what I'm going to try to do is try to use this as best as I can. Maybe not all 9 mics, I might get like 3 or 4 in there, but I'm going to try build my IR eventually at the end of the video so you guys can see how I'd use it. And if you haven't noticed yet, there's a preset drop down box here which has been compiled by MIKKO himself, where it just pretty much goes through every speaker and gives you like a sort of idea of what's going on. So you got orange sweet spots, so we got an orange with about like 7 different mics on it, and this is what it sounds like. Very British sounding, very orange. One that I would steer more towards is kind of like a 4x12. So there's 2 different types of 4x12s. There's a new speaker and the old speaker. As you can probably tell, the old speaker is a little bit more broken in, got rid of some of that high frequency sizzle, whereas the new speaker is very modern, very new obviously, and it has more high end to it. Where this plugin gets really mind-blowing is that you can move any of the mics in any which way you want across the whole speaker. It's a three-dimensional speaker, and it's going to sound different in certain spots. So for example, if I put it here, and then move it around, move it down to the bottom. So it's really customizable in how you want your tone, and you can really pick what you like. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a 4x12 old speaker with a 57 mic, and I'm just going to play and kind of scoop around until I find something that sounds good to me. So here we go. So I'm really liking the way that that sounds. I kind of gauged the whole speaker, and up here, I think it's a great little spot for the 57 mic. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another mic, and it's going to be a ribbon 121. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop around again and kind of have it like in a marriage with the 57. So it kind of blends in together and gets a nice overall tone. This tone is going to be more towards bass. So this mic is going to be picking up more of the bass frequencies, whereas the 57 is going to have more of those high frequencies. As you can see here, when I double click this one on the 57, it solos it out. Or I can right click it and mute it, and now all we're hearing is the ribbon 121. So as you can probably tell straight away, the ribbon has way more low end to it, which is exactly what we want. Sounds great to me. It might be a little bit too much of the 121 coming in, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the mix down to this 121 mic, and you can really see how it starts to influence the tone. So I'm going to start with it all the way off. So pretty much all you're hearing right now is this 57, but as I turn up the mix mic on this 121, you'll see how it starts blending in. I think sitting somewhere around there is a great middle ground between having the 121 overpowering the whole tone and having it as an accompaniment to the 57. So sitting at -12 somewhere is good for me. So when I disable this, you'll see the difference. So right now we got both of them at the same time. And now I'm going to mute the 121. So So as you can see here on this little spectrum graph here, when I disable the ribbon 121, there's a little bit more high end coming in around here, around the higher frequencies, but as soon as I turn it back on, everything kind of levels out a bit more and you get more of an even kind of tone. Which is probably what you've been hearing as I've been disabling and re-enabling it. So now say I wanted to add in a third mic, but I'm going to do a 57 again. And now the whole purpose of this mic is I'm going to try go for something that really concentrates on the high frequencies to make it bite just a touch more. So I'm not going to have it all the way out here where it's kind of influencing the low mids and the mids and stuff. I'm going to have it really, really close to the actual speaker so you guys can hear how it's really influencing the tone. This one's going to sound very drastically different. So if I start with the mix all the way up, it can get really bitey, but kind of too much high end at the same time. So I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. I'm going to try and scoop around here and try to find a position that I like, and then I'm going to blend it in. So I really like where it sits around there in that position. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I was doing before. I'm going to turn the mix all the way off, and then I'm going to slowly blend it in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable this 57 just so you guys can hear the difference between what it was like before we added it and after. So before we added the new 57, this is what it sounded like. With the new 57, as you can tell, like I was saying before, there's going to be more bite in the tone. You can see here on the spectrum analyzer again, when I disable the new 57, there's a little bit less high end going on, but as soon as I enable it, it's pushed up just a little bit more to just give a little bit more bite out of the guitar. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fourth mic to the speaker, and it's pretty much going to be acting the exact same way as the Ribbon 121 is, kind of having it like an accompaniment to the higher end of the mics. So what I'm going to pick is a Ribbon 160, that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop around again until I find that kind of low frequency to really fill out the tone and make it more even. So. I've picked this spot here and I feel like it really fills out the tone quite nicely. So I'm going to play a little riff before and after again like I was doing with the other mics, just so you can see how this fourth mic is now influencing the tone. So before. And now with. As you can probably tell straight away, adding this fourth mic in the form of a ribbon 160 really fills out the tone, makes everything nice and even, more so than it was before. And now I feel like it's mix ready and ready to be able to use in my sims all the time whenever I want it. Funny I mentioned that, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this exact IR with all of these different mics in all of these different spots with all of these different settings, and I can export that with all the different sample rate and bit depth settings I want. It's in mono, so it shouldn't matter too much. I'm going to save it in a folder called MIKKO IRs, and I'm going to call it the D word. You might have noticed in the video that I've got Ignite Emissary and NAT IR sitting there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that exported IR that I just got from MIKKO, and I'm going to put it through the NAT IR loader, and I'm going to run emissary. So what you're going to be hearing is my guitar going through the emissary, and then the cabinet I'm going to be using is the exact same IR that I just exported from here. So now we got a little bit of a different setup going. So right now we got the Fort and Nameless still engaged, but the amp and cab are turned off. All we've got on is the pedals, because I wanted that noise gate and the overdrive before we hit the emissary amp. None of these have been changed yet. I'm going to play with them as we go along. But in the IR loader, as you can see here, we have the D word, which is the exact same IR that I exported just before. You might see this section here. Don't worry about it too much, because it's not actually doing anything, because I've got the D word, which is the IR that we had before, loaded up onto the left side, soloed out, and the balance is all the way to the left. So right now what you're hearing is a mono representation of that IR that we just exported before. So now to show you how you get the most out of that IR that I just made, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this free amp sim, Ignite Amps emissary, and I'm going to make some changes, then cut to the changes that I've made and kind of do a little playthrough so you guys can hear how it sounds. So we're going to make those changes right now. So yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Again, this was the MIKKO from ML Sound Lab. If you guys liked anything you saw at any time of the video, feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you see or hear. And if you want to see more plugin reviews and demos and all that stuff, feel free to subscribe as well, because I will be doing way more in the future. Thanks again to MIKKO for sending this through to me. I'm probably going to be using this on most of the different tones I'm making these days, just because there's so many different options. It kind of feel like a waste not to use it when they sound that good. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Ciao.